Welcome, everyone. We're going to give it a couple more minutes just for everybody to jump on. We had about 40 RSVPs and we have about 17 on right now, so give it another minute. All right, welcome, everyone. It's a couple minutes past. I think some might still trickle in, but we'll go ahead and get started now. Hello, my name is Ginger Koblas. I am the Long Range Multimodal Transportation Plan, otherwise known as LRMTP, Project Manager on the San Bernardino County Transportation, otherwise known as SBCTA side. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us. The goal of this workshop is to provide some background information regarding the LRMTP that we are currently working on, and then to more importantly, solicit your feedback, thoughts, your ideas, to get a feel for what our community members think the issues and opportunities will be for future of transportation in San Bernardino County. We will be having several public outreach meetings over the next year and are open to suggestions and conversations outside of these meetings as well. Ultimately, the goal is to create a community-invested long-range transportation plan that will serve as a roadmap for future transportation in our county. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Nancy for a little housekeeping before we get started.
Thank you, Ginger. Hola, gracias por acompañarnos para esta reunión. Si gustan escuchar la presentación en español, por favor hagan clic en el icono de interpretación y seleccionen español. También pueden escuchar el audio en español por teléfono. Solamente tienen que marcar al 1-408-650-3123, código de acceso 693-441-893. And before we get started with the meeting, I just want to go over a couple of meeting formats here. So the meeting will be recorded. Webcams and microphones will remain off during the presentation. Q&A will be conducted at the end of the presentation. During the Q&A, if you would like to provide questions or comments, you can do so by using the raise hand function on Zoom or typing it in the Q&A. You should see that available on your controls at the bottom of your screen. And if you are joining us via phone, during the Q&A, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. Now I'll hand it over to Marie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marie Lewis Adams. I am the project manager for this project on the consultant side. We're helping SBCTA to develop the plan, and I'm happy to be here tonight with you all. One thing to note, even though we are having the Q&A portion at the end, we do have some interactive polls throughout, so you guys will have a reason to stay engaged throughout, not have to wait all the way to the end to participate. So with that, let's get started. So just a little bit of background on why SBCTA is undertaking this project, and then we'll talk about some of the existing conditions for transportation in the county. What does this mean? Some of the key takeaways, and what are we going to be doing next in the project, and how can you stay engaged? All right, let's see. So in terms of the background, again, just wanted to give a little context to this project. So the sort of official mission of this project is for the multimodal transportation plan to ensure the safe and efficient management, operation, and development of a regional multimodal transportation system that, when linked with appropriate land use planning, will efficiently serve the mobility needs of San Bernardino County residents, businesses, and visitors with robust connectivity to the regional system. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Just a few things to mention. This is a truly multimodal plan. So we are talking all different kinds of transportation: roadways, transit, bicycle and pedestrian, freight, van pools, carpools. So, we really want to understand how everything fits together. This is a county plan, but it also fits within the context of things that the state is doing. For example, the California Transportation Plan 2050 sets a lot of statewide goals and objectives for how the state wants to develop their transportation system. Also, California's Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure. And we're also within the greater Southern California, SCAG region, which also has their regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy. So this is kind of the larger context in which we are developing this plan for the county. And also within the county, SBCTA itself, as well as a lot of the local cities and other agencies, have been doing a lot of planning work over the past few years, especially, kind of in the midst of these big transportation changes we've been going through with COVID and travel demand changes. There's a lot of different things to fit together. So this plan is going to kind of bring things together into one place. And finally, we definitely want to, have an eye toward funding and implementation. How are we going to deliver some of the transportation improvements that the county needs? So we'll also be looking at identifying funding opportunities. Next slide. So just a little overview of the process itself. We kicked off this project in this past spring. We started with looking through a lot of existing conditions of, how transportation is set up now and what are the current plans. We do have a very extensive online collection of all this data in kind of in a story map format. It's available on a project website, which I'll get to a little more later, but a lot of that information is publicly available. We're taking that information, we're using it along with meetings like this to, determine what are the transportation issues that we need to solve, what are the opportunities to solve them. So that's kind of where we are now. We're in the midst of a lot of information gathering. The next thing we're going to be doing is to do some scenario planning, which is just kind of a fancy term for trying to think about what the future might hold and how how the transportation system might react to potential future conditions, since things are changing rapidly. Climate change, transportation technology, travel patterns, working from home, things like that. So we're trying to figure out, if these things happen, what do we need to do on the transportation system in order to kind of plan ahead for those kind of scenarios. We're going to be taking the results of that analysis and kind of developing our packaged, plan recommendations, and then combining that into our draft and final plan by the end, approximately the end of 2024. And again, we're going to be having community engagement throughout. We've got additional meetings coming up. There's going to be, multiple opportunities to provide input, and also our email inboxes are always open. So, all right. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just a little bit of contact and project information. Our project website is located within the SBCTA website. Go sbcta.com/LRMTP. There's already a good amount of information posted there. First and foremost, we have an online survey that's currently active. We've had a lot of really good responses to that online survey. It's going to be open through at least mid-October. If you haven't taken it already, please go to the website and take that. That's really going to help us collect some really good information on what people want to see in terms of mobility in the county. You can view that story map with all the existing conditions, and that's where we're going to be posting updates on our project progress and other ways to get involved. So that's the best source of information going forward. Okay, so yeah, just wanted to talk a little bit about how the plan is going to be organized. This is a very large county, the largest county by land area in the contiguous US. So we need a way to kind of look at these differences in the county and make sure that we understand that not all solutions are going to work for all the different areas in the county, from rural to urban. So these are the 6 subregions in which we'll be kind of organizing our analysis and recommendations, including the North Desert area, which includes Barstow, the Victor Valley region, the mountains, including like Arrowhead, Big Bear area, the San Bernardino Valley, the Morongo Basin, and the Colorado River. So I think that brings us to our first poll of the evening. We would like to ask you, which subregion do you live? So of these subregions, which are still showing there on the map, where are you calling in from? And if you're outside of the county, we have a answer for that too. We'll just wait a few minutes. All right, got a number of people from the mountains. That's great. All right, looks like that's pretty much the group. So we've got a good cross, got some folks from the mountains, the valley, Victor Valley, and outside of the county as well. Great. Okay, I think we might have one more question in this round.
It was in the same poll. So for those results, we see 8%.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I didn't scroll down. Okay. Which subregion is your most frequent destination? Okay, sorry. I forgot to scroll down on that one. All right. So I've got some differences here. Folks going to the Colorado River. Great. More basin, more mountains, more folks going to the valley. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Very cool. All right. So we got a cross section of areas here today. All right, so we want to go into just a little bit of the existing conditions. This is just going to be a very high-level overview. For more information, please visit the website. We do have quite a bit of information there, but we'll be going over a little bit of the context and on the transportation network. One of the first things to mention is that, San Bernardino County is projected to grow in terms of population and employment. Between now and 2050, we're projected to add quite a few residents and jobs scattered in different areas. And how these things are organized, the more folks or more jobs or more residents in certain regions. So the valley, which has the highest number of, highest concentration of population and employment now, is the area that's projected to grow the most, adding, almost equal amounts of households and jobs over about the next 25 years. Victor Valley is also projected to grow significantly. So these are the areas that have the most total number of future population and jobs. And, with our transportation network that already has constraints, we're going to have to accommodate this additional population, additional traffic on the roadways and on our transportation system and on our transit networks. And how are we going to accommodate that? So that's something that we need to think about within this plan. The next slide, one other thing we want to call attention to is demographic and environmental characteristics. The state and the federal government are paying a lot of attention to this idea of historically disadvantaged communities, areas which, through a combination of socioeconomic characteristics, incomes, education levels, things like that, and also public health criteria like exposure to air pollution and things like that. They've kind of come up with these indexes of which communities have sort of additional public health burdens or mobility challenges. And so a lot of the funding and a lot of the sort of impetus in terms of implementing these transportation improvements is being directed to disadvantaged communities, and there's quite a few areas within San Bernardino County are considered disadvantaged. So this is it's an opportunity because there is a lot of when improvements are prioritized in these communities, there's a lot of resources available. So that's definitely an opportunity for this project. All right, so before we get into the transportation network, I wanted to ask one more question. So, what are the biggest transportation challenges you face in your community today? We don't have a particular, limitation, but try to pick no more than your top three. So and the particular answers are, long travel distances. You have to go really far between your home and your job. Traffic congestion, lack of pedestrian and bike access, is safety an issue? Is lack of transit service an issue? So we've been asking these types of questions in different kinds of contexts and on our surveys, and it's very interesting to see how folks interpret the different transportation challenges that are out there. Quite a bit of answers for traffic congestion. Looks like there's a pretty decent split though. It's quite a few. Everybody's kind of split among these. So it looks like most for traffic congestion, also quite a bit of lack of pedestrian and bike infrastructure. Very interesting. Yeah, it looks like there's just kind of a lot of some mobility concerns with most of these things, not particularly limited access for underserved communities. All right. Okay. All right. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the transportation system, because we kind of, when we are studying this, we're kind of looking at it in terms of the different modes, and, roadways are the backbone of the transportation system in the county. It's how, most people and goods get around. And especially through rural areas, we've got kind of these main arteries, where are vital for transportation, because there aren't a lot of alternatives. So certain roads and highways experience recurring congestion, particularly during peak periods. There's a lot of travel time variability. You can't always assume how long it's going to take to get from your origin to your destination. There are a few projects in development to help with some of those issues, including express lanes on I-10 and I-15, to help, move some traffic and at consistent speeds, and, provide a consistent option for emergency vehicles and things like that. And on the next slide, I think we've got transit. Transit is a really big and varied topic in the county. We've got several transit operators providing rail and bus service throughout the county. So, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to transit. There's a lot more information available online. Just a few things to note. The COVID-19 pandemic definitely affected the transit system, the transit operators. The ridership declined during the height of the pandemic, but it has been returning slowly but steadily. So one of the biggest challenges for transit in San Bernardino County, because so much of it is spread out, it's rural, some of it's low density, operators have to decide what's the best way to prioritize limited resources. Do you serve more area, or do you provide service more frequently? So they have to make a trade-off between coverage, how much area they can cover, and how often the bus comes by. So that's always something that's a little bit of a challenge, because frequency is definitely attractive for travelers, but we also need to make sure we serve a good amount of our service area. So that's something that to look at in terms of funding and prioritization. Next slide. So bicycle and pedestrian network. I know a lot of people noted that the lack of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure was a challenge for them. The good news is that there's a lot of improvements planned. The county has on the left, where these maps here show the bike lanes in the county, but there's a lot out there, but there's a lot more that's planned. So we can see how the bike network is projected to grow in future. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. We know that safety is a big issue with bicycle and pedestrian travel. So a lot of these improvements are focused on safety improvements and connectivity improvements, making sure people can get to where they need to go, and they can get safely to transit stations and things like that. Freight is a big factor in the county. Truck travel. This map represents the volume of truck travel on the county roadways. The county is a hub for a lot of different kinds of freight and logistics elements. There's a lot of trucks on the roadways that can cause an issue with sort of interactions with the residential areas. There can be issues with air quality, with safety, but freight is a vital part of the economy. So, how do we make sure that, the economic potential is there for the freight, but we also sort of, how do we sort of minimize the negative impacts that freight traffic, truck traffic can have on certain land uses? So that's something that we're going to be looking at as well. All right, so that's kind of a little bit of a snapshot of some of the transportation network issues in the county. And so one other thing we'd like to ask is if you could change anything about San Bernardino County's transportation system, what would it be? So again, try to limit it to your top 3 or so. So we've got improving public transportation options, expanding the bicycle and pedestrian network, reducing traffic congestion, improving transportation for seniors, students, concentrate housing and jobs along main corridors to make it easier to get around, improving safety, and state of good repair, fixing and maintaining the current system. If anyone feels that we haven't captured any of the things that you wanted to talk about, and select other, feel free to drop, your comments in the Q&A. We really want to know, what other things we need to be considering as well. All right, well, it looks like improving public transportation options and frequency is the top response, followed closely by expanding the bike and pedestrian network and reducing traffic congestion. So, but again, we've got most of these things that have some importance. So, there's multifaceted issues and many things that kind of need to work together in this plan to make a cohesive strategy work. Okay, so just a note about some of the policy and funding issues. So again, this plan is not kind of created in a vacuum. There's a lot of sort of context to take into account here. One of the things to mention is that there is increased funding for transportation available through programs like the recent Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So there are, more funding opportunities than perhaps in past, which again is an opportunity and something that, to take advantage of, and to, making sure that we take advantage of these opportunities when they come along. However, those funding programs at both the state and federal level, they emphasize alternatives to car travel. It's not quite the same scenario where widening highways is, the number one answer to addressing delay or, improving mobility. There's a lot of emphasis on reducing the amount of car travel, for climate reasons, but also, for overall mobility and public health reasons. So it's a little more challenging to say, add capacity to roadways. We really need to look at alternatives, other ways to move people beyond just widening roadways. The other factor that's really important these days in terms of funding is, a lot of that funding is directed toward investment in disadvantaged communities. I think in California, California legislation, particularly a couple of their programs, limit the opportunities for highway expansion, but they do support housing, locating housing near, say, transit corridors in order to accommodate population growth without adding too much traffic to the roadways, and tying housing and transit together. So, because the transportation network is closely aligned with the land use and the need for housing. So we're trying to look at how all those things fit together. All right, I think that roughly brings us to our key takeaways. So we just wanted to summarize a little bit about, based on where we are, what does this really mean for moving forward, and what are the themes we're starting to see emerging for the plan. So one of the things that's really important is the diversity of San Bernardino County. There's a lot of different types of communities, a lot of different opinions about transportation. And so what we understand is that not all solutions are going to work for each area. So how do we tailor the kinds of improvements to the communities they serve? So another really important thing to note is that, the county is growing. We do need to accommodate and, be ready for that growth. However, we're not going to be able to accommodate that growth, strictly with roadway expansion. We're going to need to look at other ways to move people. In terms of transit service, transit is obviously a strong alternative to driving. However, the spread out nature of the county does make it difficult to provide frequent transit service to all the different areas where people need it. And also we understand that, freight is really important to the economy. However, there are definite challenges that freight poses in San Bernardino County, in terms of congestion, in terms of safety, in terms of air quality. So how do we balance those two? So those are some of the themes that we see emerging. And we know that, in our next steps, we're going to be diving into these a bit more. So I think we have one more, our last polling question. So which trends? So we're trying to look toward the future here. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing some scenario planning to look at, how is the future, what are those future trends going to look like, and what's going to be important to plan for in future. So, there's these different factors that we have that are going to affect the transportation system. For example, like, people working from home, which means they're not commuting at regular times like they used to. People are transitioning to zero emission vehicles. There's other transportation technology. There's, the effects of climate change, severe weather. There's the rise of e-commerce, where we have more delivery trucks on our roadways. So, based in your opinions, what do you think is going to be the most critical? So yeah, maybe select approximately top 2 there, and see what we get. Wait another minute or so. Okay. Looks like we've got highest number of answers for zero emission vehicles. That's going to be a big trend. Also e-commerce. That was also a strong trend, and somebody selected others. So I'm really curious to see what other trends. Please feel free to share with us during the next portion. All right. So let's just wrap it up a little bit. What our immediate next steps for the project team is to continue collecting community input. We have the online survey open. We're doing a few more events, and this is the time where we really want to get as many opinions as we can to understand those issues and opportunities. We're also going to be developing, trying to pin down what those future scenarios could look like, and how we can assess their impact on the transportation network. Following that, we're going to be developing draft recommendations that we will bring back out to the community. So it's going to be our tasks in the coming months. And so we, really invite everybody to stay engaged. Again, continue to visit the project website. Please take the online survey, share it with your friends and neighbors. Review the existing condition story map if you have questions about the network, or want to get into a little more detail. That's the best place to go. We're going to post upcoming events. We do have a couple of events coming up. We're going to be at the North Fontana Farmers Market this weekend, and the Rialto Farmers Market next week. So that's a good opportunity to interact with folks in person. Oh yes, that's a good thing to mention, is that the survey also has, we're going to have a drawing for a $100 gift card. So that's another good reason to take it. In terms of contact information, the email address, lrmtp@gosbcta.com. That goes directly to us. So please, continue to send thoughts, any other comments along the way. That's a good way to reach us. So with that, I think that pretty much wraps up, what we wanted to cover today, and I think we can start by taking some questions. So let's see. Nancy, are there any of the written questions that we wanted to start with?
Yeah, so we actually have a comment that was regarding one of the polling questions. I believe it was question number 3.
Okay.
This is by Tom Rodriguez, stating, I would like to see a larger connected network of pedestrian and protected bike lanes across the San Bernardino Valley region.
Okay, yeah, protected bike lanes makes a big difference, doesn't it? Great, thank you for that.
And then we have another comment regarding another of the polling questions by Pat Inyart. I find it hard to believe that fixing current roads and potholes isn't number 1. Our roads are awful. So lots of need for fixing the potholes.
Yeah, we've definitely heard about that. That's why that's one of the ones on there for sure. Yep.
And we have a question here from Jorge Camacho. Is federal funding linked to climate pollution reduction grant funding or a separate federal funding source?
There are a lot of federal funding sources, a lot of different grant opportunities for different types of projects on different parts of the network. So, climate related funding is one source, but there are others as well, for sure. So, with all these different types of improvements, one of the things we do have on our website is a list of funding sources that could be available for different types of projects. Like there are some funding sources that are geared towards bicycle and pedestrian improvements. There are some that are geared towards rail improvements, intercity rail improvements. So yeah, we've got quite a bit of information there to check out. Anyone from SBCTA wanted to add to that?
Sure. Hi, Steve Smith, Director of Planning. So thanks for that question. And there is so much now that is competitive funding. A little bit of it is formula. For example, the carbon reduction program, or CRP, as it's called. Some of it is competitive grant funding. Other is a little bit more formula based, so we have a little more flexibility. But there, as Marie said, there is a lot of funding out there. So it's behooves all of us as transportation agencies and the local jurisdictions have a lot that they can go after as well. Charging stations is another big one. We talked about zero emission earlier. There's some huge funding, both state and federal, for that. So that, believe me, is one of the things very high on our radar. And I think those of other local jurisdictions as well.
All right, other questions?
Yes, we have one from Brent Meredith. With San Bernardino County being one of the most dangerous counties for pedestrians and cyclists, how can we update Measure 1 or Measure I sales tax funding to that so that a larger share of it can be used for active transportation projects?
That's a good question. Is that anyone at SBCTA want to take the lead on that Measure I related question?
I'll pop in on that one as well. So our board is actually looking at a follow-on measure. It's not clear whether it would be just following after the 2040 sunset of the current measure, but the bike ped certainly is also on our radar, and I think it'll be important for this group and others to weigh in on where that funding should be emphasized. And a lot of times what happens is the grant funding requires a match. So if you don't have the match, you don't have as good a shot at the state and federal funding. So that's an important part to keep in mind as we go forward.
Thank you, Steve. So we have another question here by Pat. Are there any plans to address traffic in Big Bear during high traffic seasons? Have you considered a large parking lot just outside of town and shuttle into the village and to ski resorts?
That's a good question. I think those kinds of, that kind of input is exactly the kind of thing that we're looking for throughout this process is, what are the key challenges, and then, what are the potential, solutions to address those. So I think, those are the kinds of things, or just, the time of year issues, the congestion issues, safety issues, we would just really want to know about that so we can look at, what are the potential solutions. So that would be, we're going to be, some of this is more high level, the real kind of, specific local improvements are going to be probably within those jurisdictions, but the kind of, overall guidance, identifying the issues and, looking at potential solutions is definitely something we can take into account in this plan. It looks like Nancy with SBCTA would like to add.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have my camera off. I'm sitting at dinner with my family. I just wanted to add just to the Big Bear comment. We have actually been working with Mountain Transit to see how we can implement that. We wanted to do a trial weekend. So that's really actually on the front burner, something we want to actively do. The only major issue, which is something that most of the operators have said, is that it's hard to get drivers now. During this COVID time, they've lost a lot. So that's been one of the biggest obstacles, getting enough people to drive up and down the hill, getting the space to park the cars, getting security watch the cars overnight or for the weekend, but getting the actual drivers to come up and down with enough frequency to make it valuable to people. But I just want to let everyone know that is something we're working on.
Okay, so that's something that Mountain Transit is looking to deploy at some point. So that's probably the best source of information there.
And we have another comment regarding Big Bear from Julie Bush, stating, I live full-time in Big Bear Lake. I would like to please ask for a bus route off the mountain 7 days a week. And I'll just summarize. It looks like there aren't enough bus routes a week that you can take off the mountain. And it's not ideal if you are trying to get to the airport or to the dealership to pick up your car. So Julie Bush is requesting more connectivity from Big Bear to airports and other key destinations.
Right. Yeah, we have a mobility working group where we have representatives from the different transit agencies working with us. So those are the kinds of things we can share at those meetings. I like this question about the aerial tram. I worked on an aerial tram project in the El Paso Mountains. It's very convenient. So, yes.
For the benefit of the group, I'll go ahead and read it.
Yes.
This is
Oh,
from.
sorry. I forgot not everybody has access to the.
No problem. From Brent Meredith, please consider an aerial tram between San Bernardino and the mountains for commuting so we're not forced to drive up there, especially in bad weather. It's been used in Albuquerque, Bogota, New York, and several other places.
It can be very useful. All right. Are there any other questions? Any hands up?
I believe those are all of the questions that we have in the Q&A at the moment.
Okay. Just wanted to, again, let everybody know that, if you have other thoughts as this project progresses, please don't hesitate to email us, or check the website. We'll have other events too, but, if you wanted to drop us a line, we're available. This is a big project. We've got, the whole county to cover, but we're gonna this is the kind of input that is really important to us. So we really thank everybody for participating.
Thank you, everybody, for your time, effort. Please, as things come up and if you think of more things, like she said, contact us, let us know.